And you see I got something on the board up here. It's not really meant for you to really, it's okay if you can't see it that well, because we're gonna talk about it. But hopefully you can get some notes from it and maybe apply a lesson to what we're studying today. If you remember Wednesday night, we talked about having a plan, right? Having a plan. And then the idea there was all in preparation. And the assumption there that we made mention of in our class was that, we're not gonna have a plan, a lesson in our pocket, and if we're at Walmart, we're running somebody, here, let me get my lesson out, right? That's not what he was talking about last week. What he was talking about was being able to, for those who would accept an invitation to study God's Word, then have a plan. And I think that's kind of where the author was going here. And in this lesson here, from a very high level, he's talking about from a congregational perspective, the efforts that from a corporate perspective, where the church comes together and has a plan where we're working together. We all do things individually, but then there are times we come together and do things. And he's addressing the times that we come together and we work together as a congregation, or pairing up, or groups, or whatever that may look like. He's mentioning the idea of coming together and working as a plan. There's several things here that I kind of want to bring out before we get into the meat of our lesson. The very first thing that he put there, and I want to talk about this a little bit, is we don't plan to fail, we just fail to plan. That there are different variations of that saying. The one I'm familiar with is, if we do not plan, then we plan to fail. But either way, these are some adages for, I think it's attributed to either Ben Franklin or Winston Churchill. There's a little uncertainty who actually came up with that. But the message there is that if we do nothing, then we shouldn't expect anything from a positive outcome. We may fall backwards into it sometimes, but it's not of our own doing. It's not of our own preparation, our own planning. And that's what that little saying means there, is we need to be planning. We need to be building out some type of strategy, some type of plan, direction, preparation, things of that nature. Else we expect nothing but negative outcomes. And so let's apply that to our personal lives. What do we plan for in our personal lives? Not spiritually. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But what are the things that we plan for, proactively plan for, in our day-to-day lives? Do we plan our finances out to some degree? Some are more detailed than others, but we've got some type of proactive planning for our finances, don't we? And akin to that, if you're getting toward my age, not only do you have your finances planned, but you've got your retirement. We plan for retirement. Even in our 30s, maybe we start. You have a 401k, and you're planning for that. Maybe you got some individual investments, IRAs, whatever it may be. You're doing some planning, right? What about careers? We plan our careers, our career paths, don't we? Do we plan for our health proactively? Do we watch our health? Do we make decisions to be proactive about our health? Of course we do. Of course we do. Relationships, right? We work and plan our relationships, and planning is a little differently there, but we have to cultivate those. And then you think about all the things that we do physically in this life, and they're necessities, right? They're things that we need to be doing. We need to be wise, right? We need to be good stewards of the things that God's given us, so it takes planning, doesn't it? It's not bad things, right? But then there's the spiritual aspect of it. And what is it that we should be proactively planning for? And you might want to drill down a little bit. We all are planning for that home in heaven, right? But let's drill down a little deeper than that, right? That's kind of a generic given, right? What are some things spiritually we need to be proactively planning and preparing for? Start young. Marriage, right? Children, right? The rearing of our children. And I could go on and on and on, right? There's a lot of spiritual planning that should take place in the life of a Christian, other than just wanting to go to heaven, right? And that's a good thing, but it takes some planning, it takes preparation. And if you take anything away from this lesson, it's all about we need to be planning and preparing and have a vision. And that's what this lesson's all about, okay? So, I just spoke for 5 minutes. May seem like 10, but it was only 5. I'd love to hear your thoughts about what we've talked about, or maybe something that caught your eye in the lesson. Because I can tell you, I got a lot of things I want to talk about. But you know me, I will just talk. So, anything on the top of mind, or anything that you'd like to share with the class, share with your brothers and sisters in Christ about the lesson? Yes, Kevin.
I was just gonna say, you mentioned a couple of things Franklin said. One I always liked was, if you don't know where you're going, you're already there. You know?
Yeah.
So, if we think about a plan to grow our church, and a preacher a long time ago did a sermon early in my conversion, and I remember talked about 2 types of growth, and he said, are we swelling as a church, or are we growing as a
Mhm.
church? And I never thought about that,
Yeah.
but I guess the swelling would be, you're having children, having boyfriends and babies, and all that stuff is, that's sort of the swelling part, whereas the growing would be getting outside folks in, and, not that it really matters, you're still adding numbers to the church, but I think we have to have a plan to grow our church and to spread God's word, because I think that was the intent, is for us to go out 2 by 2 and to share the good news with the world.
Yeah. And by the way, swelling, I've heard that phrase a lot
Yeah.
over the years, actually, swelling and growing. Sometimes it's given a negative connotation.
Yeah.
I don't think it is. I think both are good. We rear our children, become Christians, right? So we grow internally, right? That's a good thing. Christians move into the area from other areas. They want to meet and join with us. That's a good thing. So swelling is not a bad thing, and it shouldn't be seen upon as a bad thing. But there's also a need to grow, right? And it's not just growing numbers, it's saving souls. That's what it's all about. The more souls you save, the numbers will come to their own, right? So it's not, and so yes, 100% Kelly, but I've heard that phrase many times over the years. He's mentioned in past lessons some things that we can be doing. There he talks about inviting folks to services, right? That's maybe a first step. Maybe they're not ready to sit down and have a Bible study with you, but maybe they will come and sit with you during worship services, where the seed can be gently planted in their hearts, right? We can offer Bible correspondence courses. Maybe they're not ready to sit down with you and have a lesson, but they're willing to at least entertain the material and maybe go through an interactive or working session on their own time, on their own pace, and complete that. But then, of course, once you move beyond that, he said, you can present a Bible lesson. Absolutely. Whether we talked about in our last lesson, whether it's one that we prepared, or whether it's one prepared by those who have maybe done hundreds of them and kind of honed their skills, and we use their material, what have you. And then, of course, I think this is an overarching in any instance, and that is showing hospitality, right? Whether we're doing any of those things. Hospitality, kindness is something we ought to be doing for sure. He gets into a couple different things. Mass media, right, is the first one. And then, of course, the second one is door to door. So again, I'm not too concerned if you can't see the details, but what you have on the board. So I do, with the company that I work for, and our franchises across the country, we do a lot of marketing. I'm very heavily involved in the marketing with these franchisees, and we follow something called the marketing funnel. Do you know that from end to end, bookshelf to bookshelf, the message of the gospel follows this exact same funnel? And as I was preparing for the lesson, it just, wow. It just hit me that it's the exact same model that we follow. And in marketing, first you gotta make people aware. Hey, I'm here, right? And I've got some Bible verses down there. John chapter 3:16, that's an awareness verse. For God so loved the world. He's announcing Jesus to everybody, right? John chapter 14, John chapter 8, all of those is an awareness piece that you gotta believe in Jesus. It's a very overarching message, isn't it? It's not drilling down, it's not getting into details, it's just an overarching message. Here's Jesus, right? And that's what awareness is. And when we evangelize, you're gonna see that there's gonna be an opportunity to introduce Jesus. Then there's going to be opportunities where folks already know Jesus, but they've never followed him, so there's a consideration stage. Okay, tell me more about this Jesus. Let me consider him. Then we call it the purchase stage or the conversion stage. Then in your evangelism, there's going to be an opportunity for conversion. They're aware of him, they're considering him, and now they're ready to accept him on his terms. Not my terms, not their terms, but on his terms, right? Conversion. But then from there, you differentiate. You've got those who've been converted, then you've got folks that are loyal to Jesus. But they're not quite at that point where they're sharing with others. And I got some Bible verses up here about that, by the way. John 18, 10 and 11, John 20, 27. John 20, remember Thomas? I'm not going to believe unless I see him. And he finally sees him. He says, my Lord and my God. And he had been converted. And now he's loyal to Jesus, but he hadn't went out and he'd become an advocate yet. The advocate is the one that not only are they converted, not only are they loyal, but they are telling everybody about it. That's what marketing is. You get hit in all of these funnels nearly every day. You're in one of these stages nearly every day. You've already got a place you do business with, you're loyal to, but you're not telling anybody. Then as you develop that relationship and you do business with them, now you're telling everybody, they're great, they're great. Oh, I go there, go here, right? Now you get it, right? That's exactly what the gospel is. It's this exact same, and these are the opportunities that we're going to have, especially the first three, where we can make people aware of Jesus. We can share with them the message and they can start considering following him. And then as we go a little further and we study, then they convert. But not everybody's going to consider. Not everybody's going to convert. Right? No different than in the world. Yes, Kevin?
You can tell this workbook is dated.
A little bit.
Mr. Goodall, Brother Goodall, he doesn't like mass media, obviously. But it's the last 20 years, this is an 05 first printing book, media has completely changed.
Yes.
And the way people are viewing from tablets to YouTube to, it's just, I would hate to be trying to reach a group of people these days with so many diverse ways people consume information. And as far as the first couple of your funnel there, and I agree that does match up well. I'm glad you're using that because I don't really like the path of this book, this chapter, but that first place that we got to make people aware, mass media today might be a little easier with using some of the tools that kids, younger generation, I say kids, anybody younger than me, are using to consume information. And whether that be YouTube or Facebook or the things we do with our website and pushing out to different medias. We gotta have something interested to make them aware of what we have, and it's a very interesting conversation. But I think the author here is sort of down on mass media. Well, I think we have a real opportunity to figure out, I think Trey's been talking about it, certain ways we can do clips from our sermons and put them out there and have stuff. So I think we have an opportunity to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm gonna kind of step back, because I'm kind of glad you made the point, because I was studying with a couple of you about this book, and there's a statement that I make in every lesson. If we're not careful, we get hung up on the words that he's saying and forget the point. Even to this author's notes here, because at first he kind of downplays mass media, but then he turns right around and says, but there's a place for it, right? The point is as we're looking at this topic of mass media, even though he gives some disadvantages of it, even maybe back in 2005 or 10 or 15, whatever it was, he does at least say, but it's important that we reach the masses. And then that's where we apply the philosophy here, right? To modern day, today, 10, 15 years later. So if you look at marketing, and we will be doing some of this, by the way, coming up, your YouTube channel is more than just covering our services, right? You've got your Facebook, and there's different tools within Facebook. You've got other forms. TikTok, for goodness sakes, is it, right? You've got podcasting. I'd love for us to have a podcast here. I actually do a podcast for our company. And I love podcasting. I think it's awesome. Blogging, believe it or not. A lot of people think, well, blogging's not. No, blogging is still a thing. People still look at blogs and things like that. They attract a certain segment, but it's still a useful tool. There's things like targeted marketing, targeted ads, trending marketing. There's all kinds of different keywords. There's all kinds of different ways to reach people looking, because you got millions of people all over the different media platforms, and they're searching all different kinds of things. And so targeting is really good. Geofencing is another one. Depends on, especially as from a local perspective, that's really good. Website, having, whether you're doing website or whether you're doing mailers even, he mentions the mailer here, right? That's fine if you do those things, but you gotta have some call to action, CTAs on those things, right? Because people, when they look at something, if there's not a call to action, they leave it. Their bounce rate's like 5 seconds. You gotta go. I don't see anything, so you gotta go. So there's a lot of things that you can apply to different types of marketing, and we're definitely looking into that, and we will be doing some of those things here, okay? But that's from a mass media perspective, because to Kelly's point, today probably more than ever, because of all the different platforms and all the different ways to reach. And again, Kelly said people digest and consume information differently, right? And so you can't afford not to be on multiple platforms. You can't just do one. And you can't just do it for a month or two. It's got to be a long-term thing, or else you won't be seen because of the Google algorithms and all this kind of thing. You've got to be on a long-term. And so it's again, it's something that we're considering, we're looking at. We've got some contacts to help us with it. But I do believe that mass media, and I'm using that phrase because that's what he's using in the lesson here, is definitely an approach that I think is worthwhile. Definitely worthwhile.
Well, it's cheap in certain ways,
It
like Facebook
can be.
and targeting and things like that.
Yeah.
A lot cheaper than what he was dealing with in '05, as
Oh,
advertising.
Absolutely,
You know,
absolutely. Matter of fact, iHeartRadio.
Yeah.
It's not just radio anymore. iHeartRadio has got a plethora of marketing tools that will drive traffic. And when I say drive traffic, I don't mean just people in the door. I'm talking about drive people to your site, people to whatever platform you're on, that type of thing. So yes, mass media definitely definitely is an important role. But having said all that, that's all great. That's what this right here is for, okay? That little tray right there, that's what this is for, to evangelize, and we don't really have our hands on it. And that's great, we can do that. But now we're gonna get back to work. All right, we got our lunch boxes packed and we're ready to go to work, and that's where the second section, I think that he really, he brings up door knocking, but don't focus on door knocking. Focus on working, the bigger message. If you just focus on door knocking, then you may not get much out of that section. But if you focus on, I need to be working, and here's one example, what are some other examples we can be working together and doing, right? That's the greater message. What can we be doing? Okay, door knocking may or may not. I remember years ago, oh, this is a long time ago, that several of us went all up and down these streets, handing out flyers, knocking on doors. We covered over 100 homes. We met up and went out, I think we're 2 or 3 I think there were like 3 of us in a group. And we met up with folks at their doors, at their homes. Did we have any success with that? I think we might have had 1 or 2 way back when. Was that successful? Absolutely it was. The point this writer made 2 lessons ago was, if you do all this work and you only bring 1 to Christ, it's worth all the effort in the world, right? But what price can you put on a soul? All that work is nothing compared to the price of a soul. And so, again, we don't want to lose thought in just what's he got in this here about door knocking. We want to really be open in our mind and be really putting some thought into what can we be doing from a working perspective. May not be door knocking, maybe something else, right? But door knocking is one that is discussed in this lesson. See, I told you, I've been talking for 10, 12 minutes now.
One thing that he mentioned in here, and he does it with door knocking, but I think you could apply it other places, when he talks about when you've met with somebody like that, writing down their name, what religion they are, things like that. Even in our studies with work and everything, I think if we did that, there's a lot of people where maybe, me who grew up, have always been in the church, always grown up that way, I may not can reach that person, but if I hand it off to somebody who came out of a denomination that's out of the same denomination, that person may can reach them. But if we don't ever have that information to pass it off, having some information about people you've studied with is important to maybe helping somebody else reach them.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to share something with you that has been bothering me since yesterday horribly, that I had an experience, and I just keep replaying in my mind, what could I have done differently, what could I have done differently? So I went to Walmart yesterday morning to get some ink for the printer. And as I'm in Walmart and I'm shopping and I get the toner, I'm walking back through and I see the Valentine stuff, right? It's already out in Walmart. I don't know how long it's been out. It's the first time I've been to Walmart, probably 6 months. But I think the last time I was in Walmart, they hadn't even put up October stuff yet. But anyway, I was there, and as I was walking by, there was a elderly woman and a middle-aged man talking. And you're not listening, but sometimes you can just hear what they're saying, and you just go about your business. Well, they were talking about, the best I could tell, he was asking her a question about the Bible, not a topic, but about, aren't the older supposed to teach the younger? Right? That's kind of what I heard. And I heard, talking about the Bible, and aren't the younger? And then her response was, yes, something like that. But then she said, study to show thyself approved, right? And I don't know if they were arguing. I don't know. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to pretend like I'm looking at all this stuff over here, and then at an opportune time, I'll say something. I don't know what, but I'll say something. And it went on about 5 minutes, and I didn't want to get too close to be eavesdropping, because they're like, what's this guy standing there for 5-10 minutes? You know? So I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna kind of go around the aisle and then come back and kill some time. So I go around 2 aisles, and I come back, and they're gone. Oh, and I start looking. I don't know, his name was Israel. I did hear that. I did hear her ask his name, Israel. But it's kind of like that TV show where you're talking to somebody and you turn around and they're gone. They were gone. I don't know where they went. I don't know what direction. I went up and down the aisles. I was going to try to find the young man. I couldn't find him to save my life anywhere. And I just wished I'd have stayed put where I was. Because after they would have stopped or come to a break or whatever, I would have went over and, hey, I heard you talking about the Bible. It's a great subject. I wasn't going to say anything about what you're talking about. You know, love to talk to you about it anytime or something like that. Here's my car. But they were gone. They were gone. I had just ran it through my mind so many times. I thought, what a missed opportunity, and I should have just stayed put. Anything like that ever happened to you? Maybe not that exact circumstance, but anything like that happened to you where you had an opportunity right there and you let it slip away for whatever reason? Yeah. Am I the only one?
No,
Yeah.
you're late to get to the synagogue or whatever
Yeah.
excuses they made for the Good Samaritan.
Yeah. I just went, I shouldn't have went around the corner. I should have just went around 1 aisle instead of 2 aisles. But the way they were going at it, I thought they'd be there another 10 minutes. But anyway, that has been bothering me ever since. I'm gonna find that young man, because I'm gonna go back to Walmart again. I don't know if he works there, I don't know anything about him, but I'm gonna go back to where he was and see if he shows up. But opportunities, right? Missed opportunities. I want us to look at a text that's in your lesson. Someone, who would like to read 1 Corinthians chapter 9, 19 through 23? You've probably already read it in your lesson, so you're probably already familiar with it, but someone read 1 Corinthians 9, 19 through 23. Do I have a volunteer? Paul, did you raise your hand?
I will.
Oh, okay.
19 through 23.
Yes, sir.
For though I am free from all men, I have made myself a servant to all, that I might win the more. And to the Jews I became as a Jew, that I might win Jews. To those who are under the law, as under the law, that I might win those who are under the law. To those who are without law, as without law, not being without law toward God, but under law toward Christ, that I might win those who are without law. To the weak I became as weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all men, that I might by all means save some. Now this I do for the gospel's sake, that I may be partaker of it with you.
Okay? Did you catch that? Probably didn't catch what I'm thinking about. Did you catch that?
You do what it takes.
That's the meat. But did you catch that Paul started out saying, I'm free to all men. I don't have to do this. But the bookend of that is, yes, I do. Because I want to be partakers of what I'm preaching them. Did you see that? Did you catch that? I'm free from all men. But I got to do it. You see that? Have you ever caught that in that text? You ever thought about that in that text? And then to Paul's point, what he read there, you got to do what it takes. But Paul puts in little parentheses, and that little parentheses is not as though there is no law, because I'm bound to the law of Christ, right? So whatever it takes is whatever it takes, as long as I'm still abiding in the doctrine of Christ, right? I'm not going outside of the law to win these folks. I'm staying within the law. But I'm providing myself leeway where leeway needs to be to win them. To the Jew, I became a Jew. To the Greek, became a Greek. Depends on your translation. To those without law, as one without law. Though I'm under law, right? To those who are under the law, that is the law of Moses, He's all things to all people. But yet he never compromised the truth, never compromised his convictions, never compromised right from wrong, right? But yet he became all things to all people. How do we do that today? We can read this all day long, but how do we do that today? Let's make some application here. How do we do that?
You start where they are and you build on it.
Okay, you start where they are. That's probably from an intellectual perspective, right? Right? All right, and that's certainly part of this, no doubt, right?
Well, even from a spiritual point, find out what they know
Mhm.
and then build on what they know and why they're interested.
I think
Okay.
it kinda goes to a comment you made in class a couple weeks ago, which is that common ground. You gotta find some kind of common ground with them first to start with.
Yes. That's, I think it's a combination of what Sheila's saying and what you're saying. You gotta know where they are, and then you gotta find common ground. And that's why I gave those examples the other day. In each of those lessons, they are, boy, if you read those lessons, they're different. Oh, they're different, but boy, are they full of common ground to the ear, right, Debbie?
Well, like Sheila was saying, if they come in here, if we invite them and they actually come, we have to make them feel comfortable in our midst. We have to be accepting of where they are.
I know what you're saying. No, 100%. Yeah, it's that hospitality.
Yeah.
And
make
true
them
love and
feel
concern for
wanted,
them.
Needed and included.
Right.
Not different, because
Yeah.
they're different. you know.
And what was that, I'll go back to Norm's comment to Kelly. What was that, they come in whatever state they're in, right? They come to Jesus in whatever state they're in, but they leave in a different state. They don't stay that same state. There's a doctrine today, come as you are, and that doctrine says you can stay like you are. No. Come as you are, and then there's conversion. But you got a lifetime to learn different things, right, along the way. It's not a light switch. Sometimes we think it's a light switch, but come as you are, but there's a conversion, and that conversion's in the heart, right? Which is manifested then in the life, right? And Joe, I'll get right to you. I'll never forget, and I've used this example before. Young man became a Christian here about 25 years ago. And I was up here running the Mighty Shop at the time, and I'll never forget, he came in the shop, and I've told you this before. And he said, Brother Scott, he said, I'll talk to you just a minute. I said, what's that? He said, I'll tell you, this being a Christian is hard. He said, it's hard for me to quit cussing. That was his comment to me. And I get it. I said, I understand. It is hard. Because you've trained your mind and your heart to use those language, use those words, and it's hard to stop. The key is, do you know you're doing it? And you're trying not to do it. Oh, yes, sir, brother. Yeah. Well, that's the biggest battle. I'm sorry, Joe.
Yeah, it may have been part of the comment that Debbie made, I couldn't hear it all, but, you know, some of what Kelly's doing with that volunteer too, you know, if we never go through some area, we're never gonna speak to the woman at the well.
Mhm.
If we never go where some of the people are physically, who we're not going to cross over in our daily life, who are living homeless and living a different life than what we are fortunate to live, we're never gonna have the opportunity when they are asking questions about why has God put me in the life that I'm living, we're never gonna be able to give them an answer.
That's exactly right. And then there's a lot of avenues to do that. Okay? I know some of y'all go down to a soup kitchen and help serve, right? Some of you go, or have been to the medical facility that's open once a month and help and volunteer. Some of us have pulled over literally and met with homeless folks and had conversations with them. There's a lot of different avenues. We may not be all doing the same thing, and we don't know what all we're doing, but we need to be doing something, right? Are we doing something? And remember, that's the whole point of this list. Are we doing something? What are we doing, right? And then can we come together and do something? Yes, Kevin.
Where I sort of struggle is understanding, I became as those
Mhm.
who are weak, that are with the law, those are out of the law. You know, we know Paul goes back to Jerusalem on occasion and would actually participate
Mhm.
in the ceremonial stuff, like wear his hair a certain way or take the vow a certain way. He would actually, even though obviously it's not binding on him,
Mm.
but he would do it.
As a cultural tradition.
Right, yeah.
That's the key.
Yeah.
As a cultural tradition, he took the vow, shaved his head, went on back to Jerusalem, right?
Yeah.
So he could keep that vow.
So, and that's sort of my point, is practically, as Christians today, we're so, yeah, I think we've had that conversation. Can we go to this event at this other church? You don't wanna cross a threshold and give the wrong impression or whatever, you know. But sometimes we wall ourselves off to such an extent that we're not interacting with the other people out there.
I have been to gospel meetings in institutional churches. I've gone and preached in Baptist churches, some of you know, multiple times, by the way, up in Corinth. About probably 6 or 8 times I went up there and preached on a Sunday morning in a Baptist congregation. Okay? And because I believe that if there's an opportunity to teach and preach God's word, whatever that circumstance is, I think we ought to take it. That's just me now. I'm not gonna bind you to that. Okay? But if we are using those opportunities to teach and share the gospel versus going and fellowshipping with those folks and upholding their doctrine, I see that as a difference. I think we have to plant our flag. Now, I'm not saying disrupt. Please don't get me wrong. There's a time and a place for that. I'll never forget, I went to a funeral one time. Barbara and I went to a funeral with, I forget if it was your aunt, whoever it was, and the eulogy was all about the sinner's prayer. I didn't interrupt. But after the graveside service, I pulled him aside and had a very good conversation. We started communicating and studying. There's a right way, but you've gotta make sure that if you're doing those things, that you're not complicit. Does that make sense? I can promise you that when I went to the denomination church and preached, they knew what I was preaching. I did it in a tactful way. Title of the lesson, the first one was Sola Scriptura in Latin, meaning only the scriptures. Right? I'm not a Latin speaker, so I don't say it right. But the point is, we can't be complicit. We can't just go and without being known who we are and what we are. Okay? And I have gone and I've actually said, hey, would like to talk to you about this. Heard something. Can we study about it? Something like that. That works, believe it or not, until they tell you to scram, they don't study anymore. But you can't be complicit. But to Kelly's point, I go. I've gone to a lot of different places. And I've raised questions. When I'm on the road, doesn't happen very often, but if I'm on the road and there's not a sound congregation, I have actually gone a time or two to some institutional congregations intentionally. And I've raised some questions in Bible study. Not to be disruptive, but in a tactful way. And so, yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree in the principle of what you're talking about as far as getting out. But I think it needs to be from a mindset of not I'm wrong, right, and you're wrong. That certainly shouldn't be it. Is, hey, we differ here. Can we study?
It's like the Jew-Gentile thing, we get that, that's religious, but to become weak, I think that's not
Here,
necessarily.
give me an example. Here.
Yeah.
Romans 14. Say Paul is visiting someone, a brother who will not eat meats.
Yeah.
Guess what? Paul ain't gonna eat no meat. He became weak. Okay? That's an example of that. Paul became weak in that moment. Because Paul knew he could eat anything he wanted to. But he became weak. Does that make sense? And then you apply that same mentality across the different topics those without law, I became as one who was not under the law, though I'm under the law of Christ. Right? And so on. Even to the Jew, I became like a Jew. Well, the example there was he went and conducted the ritual, right? And I will tell you, the cultural ritual, if there's no violation of Scripture, is there's no sin in that. There's no sin in that. And so, and that's the point that Paul's making there, and that's why he put that little statement that he did, that although he did all those things, he never went outside the law of Christ. He never compromised convictions of truth and things of that nature. Yes, John?
I'm gonna read 3 verses, 2 Timothy, 2, start with 24.
Mm-hmm.
2 Timothy, chapter 2.
Yeah.
And the Lord's servant must not be quarrelsome, but kind to everyone, able to teach, patiently enduring evil, correcting his opponents with gentleness. God may perhaps grant them repentance leading to a knowledge of the truth, and they may come to their senses and escape from the snare of the devil after being captured by him to do his will.
That's right. That's the attitude and the approach that you take, isn't it? Not disruptive, but with tact. I use the word tact, right? Gentleness, meekness. By the way, that's how we restore a brother, right? Or sister, with meekness and fear, right? So 100%. 100%. And that's those who are wayward in doctrine, wayward in sin, who are wayward. Now, you could easily turn to 1 Timothy 3 and Titus 3, and it talks about some of the qualifications of an elder there, and he talked about those who are teaching false doctrine. You must stop them. There's a different approach to that. But to your point, though, that's the attitude and the approach in which we take to those who are unaware of the truth. 99% of folks that are in all these different denominations are unaware. So you can't go in with guns a-blazing, folks. It don't work. Yes, Bill?
Paul did that in Athens.
Paul did that in Athens.
When he went in, he didn't immediately jump all over about having all these gods. First thing he said was he kind of complimented them and said, hey, I can see that you're very religious.
That's right.
You even got one to an unknown God. Let me talk to you about him.
Yeah.
And, you know, he didn't go in with guns a-blazing. He got them interested by talking about this unknown God that they were worshiping ignorantly.
That's exactly right. That's right. Very good. Okay, we got time for one more thing. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Good conversation. Thank you very much. Look back in your questions, and let's answer this one question. Kelly brought it up earlier, and I'm glad he did. What plan did Jesus use with the woman at the well? How'd you answer that? Bill kind of touched on that just now, actually. But how did you answer that?
He met with her and talked with her, which was against what most Jews would have done. They would have had no interaction at all with her.
Yeah, he did. That's one. Yeah, you're right. He did that. Look at the bigger story. How did Jesus begin his conversation with that woman at the well? What was the first thing he said to her?
Ask for water.
Yeah, woman, give me something to drink. Did you see that? That's how he began preaching about him being the Messiah. Because, by the way, you realize he revealed himself as the Messiah to this woman. Right? He told her, I am the Messiah. The one that you're speaking with is he. Right? But he began by saying, hey, can you give me something to drink? Sometimes sharing the gospel and evangelizing begins with something as simple as that. Hey, you got something to drink? Man, what a technique he used there. Then he turned that water into the water of life. And the water that flowed for our time's up. Appreciate all the good conversation. Sorry I dominated the talk, but thank you for everybody's comments and thoughts. Thank you. Good job. And if you have any announcements, come see me. We open them Wednesday night, she had Y'all got any of my candy? Thank you. Good job. Thank you. What's going on? I was doing that with them, they were trying to come in the door. Good, so you had a good trip? We did, I crammed a lot, in a little bit. You know. I'm gonna get this out of your way. Was the weather nice? A little bit. A little bit. You help an old man out? Appreciate you very much.
told her. She took a prayer for somebody, and, called the lady, she said, that's what you should do. Oh, but my mouth was so good. I looked at those pictures and I was bad. I told my boss, so she told me, I haven't thought
There he is.
No,